All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of our Mayday Monday podcast. This is the 20th podcast that we've been doing. Again, it hasn't been possible without some great guests that have come from different fire departments all over the country, and of course, from the support of fire engineering. Producer Pete Percillo is really the man behind the screen that makes sure we get this thing off, and of course, everybody there at Fire Engineering that helps promote this and keeps it going. Before we get started, I want to take some time and just give a shout out, I guess, or bring attention to firefighters that have died in the line of duty since the last time we got together. According to the U.S. Fire Administration, there have been 48 firefighters who have died in the line of duty this year. Most recent, this last month or 3 weeks, there's a volunteer firefighter in Minnesota was crushed by a grain bin dislodged during a storm. A firefighter in Louisville, Kentucky suffered a medical emergency. A Colorado volunteer firefighter died from stress or overexertion while responding to a grass fire. And an Indiana volunteer firefighter suffered a heart attack on the scene of an EMS run. If you can, just take some time, remember these individuals who passed away. Think about them and the families and the fire departments that were involved and the losses that they had. This is the Mayday Monday for June of 2022. This year marks the 15th anniversary, or the 15 years since a tragedy in Charleston, South Carolina. Again, if you've just got into the fire service, perhaps you don't know about it, but if you been around for a while, you know, it was definitely an earth-shattering day for the fire service back in 2007. Again, 15 years. This is why this is important, because it's almost a generation of firefighters that have come on since that time that may not know about what happened. Things here that I know one of the things that Chief Tippett told me in his takeaways here is that these things can happen to anybody, any fire department this can happen to. So the minute that, you know, we let our guard down and think, oh, you know, we got this, and is probably going to get you into trouble. So this, again, 15 years, I've been joined by 3 members of the Charleston Fire Department, or who serve with the Charleston Fire Department. And I got John Tippett, Mark Davis, and Jack deTournillon. Thank you guys for being here. If you would, can you take a few minutes or a few seconds, or ever how long you need, to just introduce yourself to the crowd that hopefully is going to watch this? John, you want to go first?
Thanks, Tony. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some time and space with Jack and Mark. It was my honor to serve with the Charleston Fire Department for about almost 9 years. I didn't get there till 2008, or 2009, actually. The experience that I had is certainly much different than theirs is. I currently work for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. I'm Director of Fire Service Programs.
Good. We'll send it over to Mark Davis.
Yeah, my name is Mark Davis, retired Deputy Chief, Charleston Fire Department from 1995 until 2017. And I'm currently, currently the Fire Chief of Lexington County Fire Service in South Carolina.
Where is that in relation to Charleston?
It is about 100 miles inland. It's joining the state capital, which is in Richland County. We are right dead middle of the state.
I got you. Okay. Jack.
Hey, I'd like to echo John Tippett and say thanks for the opportunity to speak on the subject. I just recently retired about a month and a half ago, 36 years. I did 17 years as an engine company captain and 13 years as a battalion chief.
Wow, 36 years there?
Yeah.
What are you doing now? Are you going to go sail off in the sunset somewhere? Or?
I'm on my own agenda. I lost my razor and my alarm clock, so it's off to a good start.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's I think we all aspire to live that life, right? So Let's talk a little bit about where you guys are from, right? Charleston, South Carolina. I don't know much about it. I used to go to Columbia every once in a while for my family. They had family that was from that area, so we would go there. Let me go back up here. Here we go. Charleston, right? So big town. Is it a pretty big place?
Yeah, it is pretty big. And the thing about it is, I mean, I was born and raised here, so I've seen so much growth, especially in the last 10 years. It almost doesn't look the same. And I mean, it still has that nice vibe, but every square inch of property downtown, now something's on top of it. You know, even outlying areas is growing exponentially. So that creates a unique situation within itself. So great place to be, great place to visit, but it's definitely, I've seen some changes.
So I think I saw it was 135 square miles. Is that like that's the city, right? And within that you have like different neighborhoods, and I guess I still think that when I think of city, I think of like downtown, but there's got to be some outlying like suburbs and stuff, right?
Yeah, we've got some islands. I mean, the rivers separate a lot of geographical areas. So you have the peninsula downtown, which is what you're referencing, the heart of the city. But then you also have some outlying areas that are separated by waterways that are still part of the incorporated city. And that's where you come up with 135 square miles.
So the river, what river is that? And I'm looking at the map here on the right. Is that the river runs?
So if you see the map, we have property on Johns Island, James Island, West Ashley, and Daniel Island, along with Charleston, which is written in green in the peninsula. So we have incorporated areas in pockets. And then the strange dynamic about it is you may have one house that's in the county and the next house that right next door is in the city. So as it's incorporated into the city or annexed, sometimes it's not neighborhoods. Sometimes it could be as simple as one house or one building at a time.
And Chief Tippett said there was some like rural area. Like where would that be? And looking at that map with on the left.
You have some rural area on Johns Island, and then probably the most challenging is going to be Daniel Island because we don't have as many resources over there, and then some of it's rural water. So that creates a unique challenge within itself. Most of it's municipal water systems. But as far as the rural water, you can run up with a little bit on Wamala Island and a little bit on Daniel Island. And there again, it's just how many resources you have in that area is how quickly you can jump on an issue.
So there's a lot of bridges and stuff that you have to traverse to get from one side to the next.
Yeah, fortunately, most of the drawbridges are gone now. You know, with the building and the infrastructure changes over the last 30 years, a lot of the bridges, when they've been replaced, have been elevated. So there may be one or two drawbridges in the area that will mess you up as far as you responding onto that island. You'll have to take an alternate route, but most of it now they've been elevated, so you don't have to worry about that.
So row houses in the downtown. Do you have? I mean, I know that like up in North Carolina, they had like the shotgun houses. You know those. Do you have some of that stuff too?
Yeah, I'll let Mark talk on that because he spent a little bit more downtown time than I did.
Yeah, Charleston has its own unique style of architecture. Most of the houses would be considered what's a shotgun house up north. Very narrow in the front, but extremely long. A lot of them were divided into basically two-story apartments or one family lived in them. And most of them were set based on climatology. So you would see the houses were built 2 to 3 feet apart, basically for shade due to the heat, extremely high windows, and 99% of them have balloon frame construction. So those houses have been handed down for, since the late 1700s, 1800s. And now Charleston's seen quite a resurgency in real estate prices, and those houses have become what everyone wants to live in. So you have quite the dichotomy of construction styles. But downtown Charleston, the Charleston single, as it's called and known across the architectural world, is our version of the row house.
So that is a connected house.
No, it's not. In most places, there's only 2 to 3 feet between the neighboring house.
And you call those single wides?
Charleston singles.
Singles, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. So again, 150,000 people in the city, right? Then I saw it said there was 700,000 in the greater metro area. What does that include?
North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, anything in Charleston County for the most part. So you see North Charleston there, which is one of the larger cities in the state. Mount Pleasant, which is, I think, last count around 90,000 people. So they're spread out. Charleston County is long along the coast and very shallow going inland. So everyone obviously wants to be on the ocean or close to the ocean. So it's Charleston County itself is about the second most populated county in the state when it comes to population. So you also have bits of Berkeley and Dorchester County. The city of Charleston has land in Charleston and Berkeley County. So huge amount of people and huge amount of people on a daily basis moving into that area.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So obviously waterfront, right? Waterfront stuff. So you have a lot of issues with that. Is there a big fishing population there that like goes out into the ocean and stuff?
I would say most of the fishing was pleasure fishing. There wasn't the commercial fishing element was kind of ever shrinking. The shrimping industry still had some pretty good representation out in the Sullivan's Island area, but for the most part, a lot of the commercial fishing was kind of sliding away to be replaced by recreational boats or charter boats you could go out and do fishing on.
I got you. I just had a niece move down that way. I'm gonna have to figure out where she is. But all right, let's talk about the fire department. Fire department, you guys are a pretty old, traditional, been around for a long time. Fire department. Was it, I think, the oldest in South Carolina?
Yeah.
My count, I saw you had 399 members. That was 18 firehouses, 17 engines, and 4, I guess, trucks, right? Ladder trucks.
Mhm.
And lots of other ancillary stuff.
Yeah, within the evolution of the department, Marine Division was added. The technical rescue team was stood up. There was a hazmat team that was already in existence that still has some great reputation to it. There was even a wildland component that we stood up. There were about 20 people around the time I left that had trained in the wildland world, and 6 of them had achieved red cards by the time I left in 2018.
What is the staffing on the engines and the trucks?
It was 4, mandatory 4 on every piece of equipment. We kind of quickly achieved that. If I remember right, guys, it was like 2010. We had the existing company's 4-person staffing was one of the recommendations out of the report. And we expedited that program through overtime and some other cooperation from the city. And then we had put a rule in effect that the company couldn't go below 4 personnel for no more than 2 hours.
And that's engine truck. What about the you have a staffed heavy rescue? Was that 4 also?
That was also 4.
Are the boats like they share staffing, single pull kind of thing, or was there dedicated staffing?
They were cross-staffed. We would have loved to have fully staffed the boat, but that wasn't going to be feasible. So companies at Central Station eventually became the Marine Division that staffed the boat.
Oh, good. What about of course, I mean, we're missing ambulances on here.
Well, the EMS service the transport service was provided by Charleston County. Was a 3rd service provider, and then we did first responder members were brought up to EMT status, and then at one time there were a dozen paramedics. They didn't get to do much in the way of paramedic working for Charleston Fire, but they were instrumental in our training program. They were able to. We worked out an agreement with Charleston County and the hospitals to some extent where they could go to get their skills.
So with that, right, you don't have ALS engines and things like that?
No, we never. We didn't get any equipment to bring them up to that speed.
We had the only ALS license we had was for the fireboat, believe it or not.
Fireboat.
And the special operations guys carried paramedics with them if they went anywhere on internal paramedic.
I got you. So, but first response on EMS stuff were primarily high priority or even low priority calls.
There was a time when we shifted to run all of the EMS calls in the city area because of some staffing issues with county EMS.
Gotcha. So 4 battalions and your daily shift, 100 people.
Roughly.
Yeah.
Good. And that has changed over time. So within the last, would you say the last 5 years you got the 4-man? You said 2010.
No, it was 2010 when there was like a 5 or 7 year building program
Okay.
for 4-person, and we sort of expedited the timing and put it in effect more rapidly.
Good. Right. More people is always better.
Yeah.
Oops. Let's go to the TV screen here. Let's talk about the guys involved in this incident. 9 firefighters passed away that day. So that's a crazy number of guys to die in a fire. Of course, we know what happened in New York City, and 9 people in a fire that could happen in anybody's town is a crazy amount. What I'm sure there was a lot of people, and you guys knew some of these people. Let's talk about what we have here. Mike Binky, is that how you say his name?
Yes.
Mike was 49 years old, 29 years on the job, was captain of engine 16. Billy Hutchinson, 48 years old, 30 years on the job, captain of engine 19. Lewis Mulkey was 34 years old, had 11 and a half years. He was a captain at engine 15. James Earl Drayton, seems like he was the senior guy here, right? 32 years on the job, 56 years old. He worked at engine 19. Melvin Champagne, 46 years old, 2 years on the job, firefighter at engine 16. Brad Beatty, 37 years old, 9 years, engineer at 19. Mike French, 27 years old, a year and a half on the job, and he was assistant engineer at ladder 5. Brandon Thompson, 27, 4 years on the job, firefighter at ladder 5. And Mark Kelsey was 40 years old, 12 and a half years, engineer at ladder 5. Mark, I understand what your battalion, when you were a battalion, were you a battalion chief when these guys were, when this incident happened, or were you on the fire truck?
No, I was a captain downtown Charleston.
Downtown, what company was that?
Engine 6.
6. Jack, at the time of this, you were a battalion chief?
No, I was a captain at engine 10, and I had just gotten off that morning.
Engine 10. Okay. So,
Yeah.
What can you tell me about Binky? Do you guys know him?
Oh yeah, I know. I didn't. I worked at the same house at 16. I think 16 and 19 were running out of the same house at the time that this fire had happened. And I could be wrong, but I knew Mike well. We changed shifts. We didn't work on the same shift, but a lot of us also worked in the stagehand union, which we did local theater and concerts and plays and different things like that. So some of these guys worked on that on their off days. So we got the chance to hang out and do that stuff when we were off duty as well.
Mike have a family?
Yeah, I mean, he was married, and I think he had maybe one daughter and one son. I'm not sure.
And his
But
son
yeah, family man.
his son is actually in a recruit school in Charleston right now, I believe, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Hunter Binky. Yeah, he's in our recruit school right now.
Yep.
Oh, we're going to continue the tradition. That's good.
Yeah.
How about Billy? Billy was captain at engine 19.
Right.
And Billy's brother and mother were both associated with the fire department, right, Jack?
Yeah, Dot Hutchinson, I think she dealt with fire inspections way back in the day. And then I think his brother, I'm trying to remember his name. He was I think a dispatcher at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lewis Mulkey, captain at engine 15.
Yeah. He was recently married. He'd worked downtown. Actually came to us from Somerville Fire Department. And he and I worked together at the same station on different shifts for numerous years. I relieved him every morning for, I guess, almost 11 years on the job.
Earl Drayton, obviously a longtime guy there in the job.
Yeah, we called him Wolfie, was his nickname. I don't know if Jack remembers that. He was quiet. You didn't hear too much out of him. Family man, had a large family, and it was one of those always contemplating retirement. But he was one of those guys that you enjoyed working with because you very rarely heard a angry word come out of his mouth. A big time joker, very jovial.
Melvin Champagne, only 2 years on the job at the time of this fire, was working at engine 16. About Brad Beatty, do you know much about Brad?
Yep, Brad and his wife Heather. They have 2 children, a boy and a girl. Lived not Jack, probably 3 blocks from the Sofa Superstore or 5 blocks from the Sofa Superstore.
Right.
Former military Marine, a gentle giant. I don't think I ever saw him angry or loud. You really had to push him to that threshold.
He was the engineer at engine 19. And 19 was that where they the 10 was first due, right?
10 and 11. 11 was first due, but 10 got there first. Right.
Okay, so Michael French was at also only had a year and a half of the job, but he was already an assistant engineer at Ladder 5.
Yeah, he had come out of the volunteer system that a lot of our members came from, and he had a pretty strong connection to the Charleston Fire Department. He had actually just driven for me for a vacation period. Really young, smart, aggressive firefighter. The world was pretty much at his feet when it comes to the fire service. He was in it not only on shift for 24 hours, but he spent every day, him and Brandon Thompson, in the volunteer fire stations of Berkeley County, protecting the citizens there.
Yeah, so Brandon was young as well, right? But he had 4 years on the job. Also worked at Ladder 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was actually assigned to 10. Engine 10 and Ladder 5 ran out of the same house. And Brandon was my firefighter. And we got off that morning. He actually stayed back and worked for another firefighter doing a buddy shift. But that's what he was riding Ladder 5 that day.
I got you, but he's normally assigned to engine 10.
Yeah.
And then Mark Kelsey. Mark Kelsey was engineer. I'm sorry. Mark Kelsey was engineer at Ladder 5. Yeah, 40 years old, 12 and a half years on the job.
Yeah, former Navy, had been with Charleston for quite a bit. Also worked for Asher River Fire Department on his days off. Very good firefighter, very well liked, and very knowledgeable. And was everything fire service was what Mark Kelsey was about. On his days off, he was all his fraternal organizations he was with, and he loved to ride motorcycles. Always involved in the fire service.
Yeah, I'm sure a tremendous loss for the fire department. Some shining stars that could go far in the fire department, and we lost them that day. Let's move on to this. So that day, was it just like every other a typical day in Charleston?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there was anything different from that day than any other day. And like you said, this could happen anywhere.
Any regular fire department activities going on? Nothing remarkable about the fire department activities or anything?
No, not that I know of. No.
And then the time, where were you working then, Jack? You said
Yeah, I had just gotten off that morning, and I only live about 1.5 miles from the Sofa Superstore. And so yeah, I had just gotten off that morning.
and you were at 19 then?
No, I was at 10.
That's right,
I was
10.
at, yeah, 10 and 5's in the same house. And I saw all those guys when I left that morning, got home, and I believe they were having a golf tournament, a fire department golf tournament for Shane Albers, who had lost his life in a vehicle accident February the 18th of the same year, I believe. So they were having a golf tournament for him. And then when this call went out, word spread around that this store was on fire. And one of the firefighters had called me and told me about it. And as soon as I came out of my neighborhood, it's a straight line, a shot down Highway 17, which is the road you see here. And as soon as I got on that road, you could see the big plume of smoke in the air. And I knew it was going to be bad. I've been in that building before because that was part of the district that I was in. And it has like a 4-foot false ceiling between the acoustic tile and the roof. So yeah, I mean, we all knew that that was going to be a bad one when it went, if it ever did go, and it did.
Mark, you were working that day.
No, I got off that morning. I was there, but I can't, a lot of us, if there was something big, we would come back because there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the outside as well, which moving hose lines, supply lines, helping do stuff on the outside. And that's pretty much what I did when I got there. Started looking for water sources, helped running some additional supply lines to the trucks that were on scene.
So is Charleston a department where a lot of guys live close by? Or do they have to live far away and drive in? Or?
That's changed now. They used to, but the cost of living and everything that's going on in the last 10 years, it's hard to afford to live close to the city. So there's more and more guys that live outside of the city limits just because of the cost of living.
I got you. So Mark, you were working that day. Mark, you were working that day?
Yes, sir, I was.
At
Engine 6.
6, which is it's a farther outlying.
It's downtown Charleston on Cannon Street. So this was west of Ashley is just over a river, and by road miles it might be 7 miles, 6 miles. But because downtown Charleston had originally been protected by horse-drawn companies, the stations in downtown Charleston are right on top of each other, where West Ashley is more what you would consider a suburban area, not quite as much population density, but still a huge amount of growth and a huge amount of population. So we were probably 5th or 6th due to this event.
Yeah. So initially it was 10 and 11 and truck 5.
Correct.
And that's a normal response for a commercial building fire.
So the what our response protocol was is 2 engines, a ladder, and then we had basically a standby company. They would get up and start going non-emergent until they were either called or were, and that was something that we had not been doing for that long, actually. So they had another engine, which was basically slow rolling en route to them.
I saw that. The chief said, well, when they said they had smoke in the area, to have 16 response. That means that they stepped up their response.
Most likely, yes, sir.
And then, so 6, I see 6 was kind of far down in the run, right? Because initially got relocated to the west, and then came. I guess it's not really a second alarm. It was like individually called units then.
Yeah, so you have to take it. Charleston Fire Department then versus Charleston Fire Department now, 2 completely different animals. There was not necessarily a second or third alarm. It was more of a resource pool as needed. There was not different alarm assignments based on single family versus commercial or multi-use. And a lot of this fire and the outcome was based, the tactics for a house fire were used on everything. We didn't differentiate between size, load, or lethality of the materials involved or construction. or square footage. So you have to imagine, like I said, it was the 2 and 1 and 1 battalion chief were en route to this on the initial.
And that was a typical response to any fire in Charleston at that time.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that, right? Where you said like how like everything was kind of fought the same, right? And that's where I came from. We would send 5 engines and 2 trucks to everything, whether it was a 2-story single family detached or a 10-story high rise. So you ended up like, kind of having the same tactics for everything. If that's what you did on the last one, that's what we'll do on this one. So I can understand. So so initially it was trash or debris in the alley.
Yeah, so in the loading dock area, and the others can correct me, just based on the radio transmissions from the call. So Charleston at that time had an open radio system, so we heard all calls that went out. So we heard them dispatch for a fire at the Sofa Superstore, with the understanding that it was in the rear at the loading dock. So the first new engine actually went around to that back street you see on the seaside, thinking they could get there. Engine 10 arrives and
Back
comes
here,
down the loading
all the way back here.
Right.
Okay.
And so that actually put them as being the second due. Engine 10, which is now first due, goes down the loading dock there on the Delta and finds fire on the exterior of the building in an area where there was discarded cardboard and other packing materials. And they had also done a lot of treating of the furniture with stain guarding and other stain resistant materials, which led to a very combustible condition on the wood associated with that loading dock area.
And so they think that like discarded smoking materials.
From my understanding, and Chief Tippett can answer this better, or Jack, at my understanding and my discussions with the powers that be, that was the most logical scenario because of people who had routinely smoked in that area.
I got you. Yeah, no, I can see that. So that 10 and correct me if I'm wrong, right? The chief kind of got there first. The battalion chief got there first and said, 10, come down here to the side, or
Buddy Yates got there on scene. I believe he left the station with 11, and 11 made the turn and went around to the back road, and the battalion chief pulled in and directed the second due engine, which is now going to be first due, engine 10, down to the loading dock area.
Okay. And they had a pile of stuff, but it was going pretty good.
It was, according to their initial, it was going pretty well. And apparently at this point had already started to penetrate the metal clad exterior of the main showroom there you see in the addition, and an office area at the back of the showroom where they did furniture repair, spreading toward the warehouse.
So it was underneath the loading dock roof at that point. So it was wasn't just a pile at this point. It was probably underneath this too.
No, if you think about the timeline too, there was only one employee in the building. Everyone else had gone. I think, initial call for this was after 7 o'clock. So the fire had probably been progressing for several minutes before it was eventually called in by someone who saw the conditions. So it was advanced as a trash fire where it had already started to impinge on the structure.
Yeah. Looking at the information and the pictures there, you can see this is pretty early, right? Because you can see 10 is already back down the alley, and then you got 11 and the truck in the front. So not much in the front, but definitely a lot of action, a lot of stuff going on in this loading dock area. So 7 o'clock. First units get there. What about 7:10? It didn't take them too long to get there. And then it was inside. You think it was inside by the time 10 got there?
My opinion, I believe it had already started spreading into the warehouse area on that Charlie side, which you see the raised gray metal. And I believe it was into the office areas and probably going into that void space above the showroom An assistant chief arrives on scene not long after 10 and 11, and actually goes inside the building. There's no smoke conditions inside the Sofa Superstore, but when they tried to go from the main showroom into the loading dock area, the door is basically pulled out of their hands because of the amount of air that's traveling back towards the seat of that fire. So it was spreading in both directions. It was spreading towards the Charlie, toward that warehouse area. It was consuming the loading dock at the same time and moving towards the Alpha into the actual Sofa Superstore site as we know it.
So they reported some resistance on that front door to get into the main showroom.
They reported that when they went through the showroom and tried to transgress from the showroom into the loading dock area, that the door was pulled from their hands. They had to struggle to get it back closed about the amount of air rushing into the loading dock area.
So the loading dock area, this is, I see now, because I thought maybe it was just like an open door, you know, like a loading dock, but there was actually a sliding door that they had to open to get stuff there, huh? And
Yes,
they say that they would, guys with the workers would come out and smoke out here.
I'm not exactly sure on what exact area it was. By the time I actually made it around to this side after the fire, it was pretty much destroyed. So I couldn't give you exactly where they put it at the seat. It was in that area of the loading dock.
Okay, so the first picture, this one here, was at about 7:10, I believe. And then this is 7:30, I think it was. Not much later, but still, you could definitely see conditions in the front are a lot different than they were when they got there, right? And this picture here. At this point, how many companies are you think are inside?
On the top left, the gentleman you see out in the tan gear is St. Andrews Fire Department getting ready to go in. So right now, there's probably 3 line members active inside the building and the 9 fatalities. So what quickly happens, my company comes out, we pass across St. Andrews as we're exiting the building rapidly. We basically knock over several members of St. Andrews as we're trying to get out low on air. They turn around and come out some windows right here to the left of the bush. And then just a little bit later is we've got almost full involvement of the showroom.
Oh, so at this time here, the St. Andrews guys have gotten there.
Yeah, that's St. Andrews. Charleston had black gear and St. Andrews has the tan. St. Andrews Fire Station is geographically probably closer than any of ours, or at least close to that. That's them getting ready to go in support. And the last Charleston units that are still viable are coming out at
So
almost
those guys had already rescued the one store employee.
The rescue of the store employee happened in the back on the back toward the Bravo Charlie. So they came in and they cut through the wall here and brought him out.
And that was their initial assignment, right? Was to go do that.
I'm not quite sure which company was assigned to do that. And I only know that it's St. Andrews based on the color of their gear. So that's the front door.
I got you. Do you know the condition? Was that employee, was he taken to the hospital? Was he hurt bad?
As I recall, and Jack might know better, he was treated and released. He was on the phone with 911, given information about where he was at during the rescue.
Okay, so when you guys got there, when six got there, what was your assignment? Did he tell you to bring the 2.5 or 1.5 inch?
My assignment was there was a line for me right at the front door just to come basically through the front door.
Oh, it was already, there was one line here in position, bring
There
that
was,
inside.
correct, there was a 2.5 and a 1.5 and a 1-inch booster running into the building.
Conditions when you got there, was it a lot like what it looks here, or was it wasn't that bad yet?
We went upon our arrival, the windows were still intact on the front. I took about 2 steps into the building with my firefighter and I had 0 visibility.
When Jack, you obviously weren't even here yet, right?
Right. I think I got there about 7:20, if I remember right. And as soon as I got there again, I was off duty. I didn't have any gear, but I knew there was a lot of outside work. And I know Chief Rusty asked me to run down to the corner and see if anybody had hooked to that hydrant and if there was a hydrant there. So I came back with that information. And then me and another guy started shuttling supply lines into engine 11, which is out front, because with 2.5-inch supply lines, you know it's not going to be good. So we tried to get as many lines into that truck as we possibly can so you can pull hand lines off the back of it.
I got you. And the reports were right from the other than the door that they couldn't get open, that conditions weren't too bad on the inside of the showroom when they made entry. Is that right?
Correct. They basically walked into the showroom when they arrived on scene, and the fire was in the loading dock area. The assistant chief and another member or so of the fire department walked through the showroom with no SCBA, and it was conditions like you would expect in any business you go into on a daily basis.
And then you guys getting there, by the time you got there, which couldn't have been more than 10, 15 minutes.
If that, we our relocation was canceled and we pulled in. I watched engine 19 pull in as we pulled up.
I got you. And those guys were inside.
Yeah, we
At this
watched them
point.
go across and go in the building.
When you got there, you said you reported 0 vis by a couple of feet.
Well, after I went in the building, so right there at where you see the gentleman at the main entrance, after you stepped in about 2 feet, you had 0 visibility. The only way we found our way is by basically having a hose line between our feet and transgressing along the pathway that was inside this building. And, you know, like Jack mentioned earlier, the amount of furniture inside this building compared to its square footage is unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all been in one of those places, right? In our hometown where there's it's not the Ashley furniture store or the Shaw, right? It's a homegrown one, and they packed that thing full of stuff. So this building was not sprinklered, right?
No.
All right. Was there a Mayday call given?
There was, I don't know if that's, I'll let Jack speak on it. In my opinion, there wasn't. There was people who came over a radio, but a majority of this time I was out of communication anyway. But as far as a formal Mayday is what we would say today, I would say not. But
Yeah, I think there may have, like Mark was saying, I think there may have been a couple of guys that had mentioned the word Mayday, but not in the sense of the formal Mayday and the response to the Mayday like the modern fire service does today. It was a call for help. And there was some other words that were being used as needing help in here or whatever. I can't remember because it's been so long ago, and there was a lot of dialogue that went across the radio. But yeah, not the formal Mayday like we do now. But yeah, there was a call for help and to explain that there were some issues inside and they needed some help.
So, Mark, your crew, you said you turned and followed the line out. Relatively orderly exit.
we followed the line in, but the exit was anything other than or orderly. I would say that. No, it was at that point, most of us had become separated. It was that ominous feeling of doom that something was wrong. The power button had broken off of my radio, so I had no communications. So at
a point for me, it became just a matter of, I've got to get out of this building or I'm not going to live. So orderly, not until I ran into my actual crew, which were on the other side of a door from me. But once I got to them, we got out of the building and the best fashion we could.
And that's what you think, everybody was doing that.
With the exception of those gentlemen you see from St. Andrews, I don't know that at this time there's anybody else in that building but my crew and the 9 guys who died. So
Was there a rescue attempt for, I know your crew's out. Was there a rescue attempt for crews that might be deeper in the building?
we had an accountability issue at first with the amount of people that we thought were missing. And then with the amount of we got 9 out of our original assignment who were gone, a major collapse of any type of command structure. And that volume of fire that we were fighting on multiple fronts. We weren't organized enough to recognize how many people we had gone or to make a solid attempt, unless it would have been, we visually see and we're going back. There was never a fruitful attempt. The gentleman here from St. Andrews believed that they got close from where we actually ran into them, is where we found the first 2 firefighters down. But as far as a coordinated effort to do any type of rapid intervention team, no. Within 14 minutes, the roof of the main showroom was basically down on the ground. So we didn't have the resources, the time, or the understanding to progress down that path.
So 14 minutes from this to collapse?
No, sir. About 14 minutes from that picture you see where the fire's venting out of the front. So right here to the bottom right, 14 to 15 minutes after that, you've got the main part of the showroom, which was the 120 by 135, the original section. It starts to come down. And when it comes down, it puts a large portion of the fire out in the showroom, where you still have the loading dock and you have the warehouse is still heavily involved, plus the 2 wings.
I see. So this middle part here, we had collapse near this alpha side.
The facade fell towards the street, which blocked a lot of the view, obviously. And then the main showroom basically split right down the middle. The roof did, and standing on the alpha looking, the roof on the right came down and you had maybe 4 feet underneath it in portions. And then the roof on the left came down and then portions went all the way down to within 1 foot or 2 foot of the showroom floor. And the right addition roof and the left addition roof stayed up. There were fusible link doors between those additions. So those roofs stayed up, but the main showroom, when that roof came down, it actually suppressed a large portion of the fire in the front.
Jack, I know you said you got there later and worked on some outside stuff, right?
Yeah.
And from what I hear, there was water supply issues.
Well, you figure if you're running 2.5-inch supply line, which we did then, we didn't have LDH. So you're only going to get so much through it. And then with the hydrants being as far apart as they are, now you got a friction loss issue. So right here where you see engine 11, there were 3 different hydrants in different locations that we were trying to grab to bring water in there. But it's like someone turned over a bowl of spaghetti in front of engine 11. So we were trying to trace the lines and find out where they went and what truck they went to find out how much residual pressure they had on the hydrant. Because with a grid system like that, as far as your municipal water system, one hydrant you could be stealing from another. So, we had to go and find out, okay, these trucks, how much residual water do you have left? Can you take another supply line for engine 11? So that was a constant battle, trying to keep water to engine 11 in the front so they can put as much in that showroom as they can.
Well, especially, right. I mean, initially you thought you needed 200 gallons a minute.
Yeah.
And then you're going to need 1,200 gallons a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You couldn't put enough on it. So I don't even think 1,200 gallons a minute would have done it. You just could, because you couldn't hit it from multiple points. It was just, I hate to say it, but it was almost like a loser from the start. You couldn't put enough resources on it to really knock it out. You know, and there again, if you don't have 5 or 6 inch or even 4-inch supply line, you're handcuffed with your water supply from the start.
No, absolutely. And I think, right, our experience and now our research shows these spaces are so big
Yeah.
that when they get to be fully developed fires, we probably don't have enough firepower, at least initially, to really mount something. So yes, okay. So Mayday's called, assholes to elbows to get out. There's some efforts to try and get some of the trapped, but at what point was it, hey, look, we can't go in there, we can't, it's not safe enough, we don't, at what point do you think was that call was made? And was there resistance?
There was resistance, and I'll say, not long after the actual main showroom and the right and left addition became fully involved. By then, everything inside the structure was burning. It was, the call, especially a lot of line officers and battalion chiefs from the scene were saying, stay out of the building, stay out of the building. But and with no offense, that's not the Charleston way necessarily. Extremely aggressive fire department. But once we knew that the volume of fire and everything was completely overwhelmed, we didn't make any efforts other than we did pierce some walls, and Jack could probably say which better walls. I remember some around toward the loading dock area where we were trying to get into the building to see if we could see anybody who was inside there.
Yeah, I'll agree. And the thing about it is there was so much heat, you couldn't even get close to it. Once the fire vented itself through the front, you couldn't get close to it. There was just no way. The heat was just extreme. And there was no opening, like a void that you could run a line through. Then like Mark said, now we're starting to look at alternative methods like breaching a wall or whatever. And that takes a lot of time. And then you're still trying to fight the fire and do something with it. But it was overwhelming. You could not put enough resources. When it got to that point, you could not put enough resources on it to make a difference.
Did it become again, I guess it was a surround and drown.
Yeah.
And then again, just keep resources coming. Did Mark, you guys, after you came out, did you get back into the firefight, or did you need medical attention?
No, we stayed on the alpha side, and I think my first inclination that something was wrong to the magnitude that it was is when we got out. And I remember seeing all the off-duty firefighters, but there was not any on-duty firefighters. Well, where are all the crews at? Where are the people supposed to be at? So we manned what we could. Remember, you got an engine on the front of this building. Let's get basically, as I recall, the supply line, the initial was 37 sections of 2.5-inch hose to get water supply. So we weren't doing a whole lot with capacity of water. So we stayed out front of the building, and eventually I pulled my crew back and did a head count and a make sure everybody was okay type moment.
So off-duty guys came back to work. Was there a lot of mutual aid brought in?
We had St. Andrews and St. Paul's. I recall being there, and then later on into the incident, Somerville Fire was on scene for rehab. So a lot of agencies came in to support, but the idea of sharing the sandbox, so to speak, was not necessarily well endorsed or well understood in Charleston at the time.
Now I know that I think the last firefighter was recovered. Was it late or early the next morning, like 4 o'clock in the morning? How long did it take to put the fire out? Do you know that? When do you think that was extinguished or under control, I guess?
I can only speak. Majority of my time was on the alpha side in the showroom.
that fire was actually contained because it burned up the majority of the fuel in a relatively timely manner. When we went in to do body recovery, in the initial stages of that, the aerial was still up above us, applying water to the loading dock and to the warehouse. So that took several more hours for that fire to be contained due to the compaction and the amount that was in there. But as far as the showroom itself, it basically acted like a blowtorch, and it burned itself out in a relatively timely manner.
And you would say that that was this front building, this back one lasted longer?
By my recollection, yes, sir.
But that one was even more, right? The volume of stuff back there with high rack storage and that one was, you think, worse than the showroom?
I think the big issue with the warehouse is we weren't really focused on our efforts back there because there was nobody trapped inside. So it burned longer, hotter. I mean, that thing is wrapped with tin. So all the tin was red. It was just glowing red. But all the efforts were in the main showroom where the personnel were. So we really didn't mess with the showroom. I mean, the warehouse that's back on the Charlie side. We didn't really mess with that too much until way later on.
Mark, when did you guys leave the incident scene?
The next morning, probably around 7:30, 8 o'clock or so.
Yeah.
Jack, did you think that was the fire department back in service, or was it again? I mean, I understand that you still had resources there, but you know, and there was people that were distraught. Was it? You think it was still functioning?
As well as best as you could, given the circumstances. And I will say that aside from not having a mutual aid agreement with some of the neighboring departments, all of them did send resources and they manned our stations because they knew what had happened. And they knew that we were going to need help through this. We didn't have the resources to recover even right away. So there was departments that came from all over the state that kind of helped with the manning the stations, even days after. I think it may have been up to almost a week later that we had other departments from across the state that were helping us out. But yeah, initially right away, you had some of the outlying companies that were still stood up, but I don't know, you still had a good portion of us that were just out of it, you know, just trying to wrap our heads around what had just happened and picking up the pieces. And it was yeah, it was crazy.
No, I can't even imagine what you guys were going through, and I know that fortunately there's no fire departments that know that, right? It's a good thing that we haven't had this happen, and unfortunately you guys had to learn from this. Let's talk now kind of about the recovery from this. I do want to show one more picture just so we know who these guys are again. Again, 9 guys. Really, what would you say, four companies that were really involved there?
Yeah.
11, or we had 16, 15, and truck 5. And 19 lost members that day, and I'm sure I mean, that's a one way to say it, right? All gave some gave all, because it affected definitely affected the Charleston Fire Department, and everybody in the fire service at that time was rocked by what happened. Again, memorials and stuff are only, you know, that's great that we do that. We'd much rather have them here with us than have a memorial somewhere. But this was the site of the building, right?
Right.
And so they have markers designating each firefighter where they were located in that area.
That's correct.
And then open area. So I saw something that I guess it got vandalized recently.
It's been a while back. One time a vehicle went through there. That driver may have been impaired, but it broke through the gate and it went through. And then another time an individual came out there and did some vandalism.
Yeah, that's horrible. So again, a really moving place and a good tribute to the members that were there. Afterwards, again, we all know reports were done, right? NIOSH reports, NIST, the big Routley report came in and investigated these kinds of things. What initially what happened in the fire department? Again, I know that you lost 9 guys. Everybody had to be reeling from this. Did it really bring you guys together, the fire department together? Do you feel a sense of everybody kind of tightening up and supporting each other?
Yeah, I think so, because I mean, you had to lean on each other to get through this one, and that goes beyond the Charleston Fire Department, because like Mark was saying earlier, some of these guys pulled volunteer time in different areas. So this is one to where everybody leaned on each other to help you get you through it. And then you had to start working on what changes need to be made. And culturally, we were kind of behind the times. Well, we weren't kind of, we were a lot behind the times with the way the modern fire service looks. So we had a long road ahead of us as far as getting back to where we needed to be.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I mean, it was I think we probably spent a month of just shock and disbelief that it even happened. A week of memorials basically and funerals straight, riding a fire truck. And then, the organization we spent a good year, between Routley report and that type of thing, finding what our pathway was forward. And I mean, there were different camps in the fire department, just like there are with any. But when it comes to memorializing the 9 people, there was never a divide. And I would say 99% of the Charleston Fire Department got behind the wheel and pushed it forward. And I think you're hard pressed to find many organizations in this country that made the transition or made a transition as quickly, as swiftly, and as effectively as Charleston Fire Department did in this year's. And
So
that's
you
Tom
said-
Carr, John Tippett. Yeah.
You said 99%?
I said the fire department was together. I would say that 99% of the fire department was together in a common cause. And then you've got in any organization, you're going to have a couple people that would say it was just a bad day. That Sofa Superstore was not a bad day. It was a combination of many years of either lethargy or failure to look outside, however you may want to look at it. But the times changed on the fire department. As much as I love the Charleston Fire Department, with the exception of my family, there's nothing I'll ever love more than that job. But Charleston Fire Department failed to maintain its state of readiness in today's world.
So, but I mean, we'll go with the obvious. You were ISO class 1, right? So does that mean what do you think that did you hey, we're great, we're ISO 1? Is that one of the things that was that cultural too? Was that
I think the culture of the Charleston Fire Department was well established before the labeling of the ISO class 1. And when you think about it, I mean, the class 1 ISO rating is geographically supported by, we have a small area. We have a large amount of firefighters in a small area. We have the infrastructure, between dispatch and the water supply systems, that you can facilitate that. And as a fire chief is under an ISO review right now, I hate to say this, but I don't know that ISO fully at that time endeavored to understand operationally what was going on, other than water supply, equipment, and that type of thing. And, as a fire chief, as a fire department, it's imperative that we maintain our tactics with what our threats are in the real world. And that's what I don't believe the Charleston Fire Department did. And I will preface this by saying I was probably one of the most aggressive people in Charleston, and I loved the way it was. But a lot of the time I knew better, but it had worked forever.
Well, I would be jealous of a fire department that didn't have ambulances in it, right? I mean, that again, I realize that, right? But so yeah, right. You could have you could have a bunch of fire trucks. If you have more fire trucks than you have a need for, right? Your ISO is going to go up. And that's, again, as an operational guy, I didn't know what our ISO rating was, right? I knew we were tough firefighters and you know, we could do that. So I guess, again, that's one of those things that you can hang your hat on it, but what does it mean to the line guy, right? And is that translating to operations and tactics? So again, thank you I wanted to ask about that. But so 99% you think we're on board with this, we can't keep doing it this way.
I think we were on board with fixing getting the Charleston Fire Department through. I think that because the Charleston Fire Department was very much a siloed organization, I don't know that there was a lot of firefighters who had worldly experience outside of Charleston. So what that destination was and where Charleston needed to be, I think is where the Routley panel report came in so much on giving that vision. Because in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, and Jack can speak to it on his side, we did flounder for a bit, even after the Routley report, we're trying to find our way. We bought 5-inch hose, we did this and we did that, but we didn't have an organized approach to it. And we were trying. At the end of the day, we needed someone to come in and be that divine leader, so to speak, that servant leader who put us on the right path.
Did you get that?
We did. Yeah. Tom.
Yeah, I think I got good things to say about him. I remember him from being a volunteer in Northern Virginia, and he was Montgomery County. He came into us and taught us about vehicle extrication. And I was, a young punk full of special ops. We were tough guys, and he really spoke to me in that class, and that made a connection. And then, kind of following what he did, I even went to remember John Rescue 90 you guys did in Montgomery County, and that was awesome. It was just good stuff, and that was Tom Carr through and through, right? And then what he did there, and then to come down there. Now I think I say did you because knowing that your answer was going to be yes, and that you got Tom Carr, and then John Tippett came along with that, right? So that's good. John, you got in there, and did you find a fire department that couldn't function because of they were distraught over the loss, or were they back on their feet and trying to do the best they could?
My impression was it was a mix of a lot of the same. Mark put it really well in saying that there wasn't too much disagreement that something had to change, but the disagreement became on how that was going to be implemented and what the change limit and level was going to be. So more than anything else, when I got down there, which was really something that I had never envisioned, when the Charleston firefighters visited Montgomery County and we got to talking to them and things like that, it was evident that there were people that were hurting and there were people that wanted to do things different. We shared information, which was kind of like the nature of how Montgomery County had evolved. No means perfect by any stretch. We had our own struggles like everybody else, but there was a different approach to, I thought, how you would look at something that came across the desk of, well, this fire department is doing this. What do you think? And typically, it wasn't just rejected out of hand. There was always a group of people that said, "Well, let's try it, see what happens." We were fortunate that Tom made it to the top of the organization. He was legendary. There was no doubt about it. And when he announced his retirement and that he was going to Charleston, we thought great for them. We were despondent, but really, really great for them. And then he invited me down there to do a presentation on crew resource management and some other initiatives that we had implemented in Montgomery. And when I got home, he called back and asked me what I thought, and I thought it was really great. I ended up having to spend extra night there because my plane was delayed, or my flight was canceled. So I spent the night at Central Station, and he said, "What do you think about coming to work down here?" And I wasn't sure that I heard what he said, because I was in the drop and getting ready to go anyway. So I talked it over with family, friends, mentors, and they thought it was something that was, if he asked, it was tough to tell Tom Carr no, if for no other reason, because you wanted to do the right thing by him. And couldn't have considered it a higher honor or privilege to even be considered for the position.
No, so I got a list here. If you don't, let's go look at some of these things that were suggested and initial changes recommended by the panel, a deputy chief, assistant chief, right? Because yes, you didn't have a lot of upward leadership there. Was it just a shift chief and a fire chief?
Yeah, there were 3 assistant chiefs, 1 for each shift. The fire chief and the fire chief had a secretary. There wasn't even an XO for the fire chief.
So now you were able to establish like somebody in charge of admin, somebody in charge of operations.
Yeah, that was one of the things Tom convinced. Well, actually, the recommendation was there, so Tom was able to get it through. And really, in deference to the mayor, Joe Riley at the time, he had made a statement publicly somewhere along the line. I remember him repeating it, but I don't think I wasn't there for the original announcement, that everything that was in the rally report was going to be implemented. And that sort of became kind of legendary, really, because there wasn't any, we're going to do up to number 8, for instance. We're going to do all 230 or 40 plus recommendations. That there wasn't a really big, deep fiscal study made of those things. He just made the statement, and then from that point on, by the time I got there in 2009, we pretty much, when we went back and said recommendation number 17 says we do this, here's how much it costs, we were pretty much given permission to do what we did.
That's pretty impressive to not have some strings attached on some things. But another one is the safety officer position. Was that more of a shift safety officer? So you had one responding to incidents?
It was a health and safety officer position. So when I got there, it was a day work slot, and basically it was a health and safety guy. He was allowed and encouraged to run calls, but his primary duty was to enact a lot of the health and safety recommendations that were in the report.
All right, establish a PIO, 2 dispatchers on duty at all times. Was that not something that happened before, and that was taken away from? Was that impacting responses?
We had our own dispatch center built inside the police departments, which now they're in a consolidated dispatch center with the county. The night of the Sofa Superstore, there actually were 2 on duty, but there had been times, especially in after hours, where we would go down to just 1 dispatcher handling all fire traffic for the city, which just eventually was phased out to go to the county dispatch center.
I listened to the one of the audio tapes, and there's a dispatcher involved. I'm sure you guys know, right? He would call him up and saying, Hun, send the sheriffs over here. We need traffic control, and and love ya. And he was he was an interesting dispatcher there, but I'm sure he's probably somebody you were familiar with.
Oh yeah, I was a line captain for many years.
Oh, he was a firefighter?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good to listen to. Minimum staffing of 3 on duty firefighters on all engine and ladder companies. So you would dip below 3 previously?
Not on an engine usually, but we would go down to 2 or close a ladder company pre Sofa Superstore if staffing was required. We didn't have an overtime policy. There was no mandatory callback. If you didn't have people, you didn't have people.
All right, good. That was, so you eventually got to 4 on duty firefighters on all fire companies.
Correct.
Appropriate incident command procedures in all incidents. Not real organized structure beforehand.
I think it's
2007 and the previous time was an interesting place in Charleston. I'm sure there, and I know there are still places like it very much in the country. But what you would consider, you mentioned earlier, a typical response for, DC fire being 5 and 2, when we're sending 2 and 1 and 1 battalion chief. The additional calling of other resources was a rarity, and it's sometimes frowned upon. And if you have, 6 people working, 9 people working on a scene, the expansion of the incident command system is not really used. And I don't believe it was supported by Charleston at the time. And, what we did not know as an organization, it was astounding. So these things were, it's not that they were not condoned, but they were also not seen as needed based on our culture.
Understood.
Yeah, I'll have to echo that. And there again, where Mark says it was frowned upon, when you got that 2 and 1, it was like, you guys better get in there and get it, because we're not calling for help, because it means if you call for help, it meant you couldn't handle it. So, it's kind of crazy, but you're somewhat a product of your environment. And that's how we were culturally, that's how Charleston was, very aggressive, like Mark had explained earlier. So it's get in there and get it and give it hell for as long as you can.
No, and I agree. I think one of the phrases that has become a frequent heard now is "you don't know what you don't know."
Yes.
And it is amazing that is the case. Appropriate use of PPE and SCBA. Again, I can see where that probably would, if you got it done before the chief got there, you didn't have to wear your stuff, right? So so that became a bigger issue. And did the safety officer position help with ensuring that got done?
Yeah, I will say, we were pretty strict about using your SCBA, but we did have a lot of people who would come back off duty and maybe not follow the policy or help out and get back in. Not speaking of a sofa superstore, I know on many occasions I've pulled up on off duty and stuck my head inside the building or a little bit more. But I think that the fact that they had to put in 2008, 2007, 2008 into a document saying that we should use SCBAs kind of speaks to the culture of the organization at that time.
Nope, understood. So 2 in, 2 out will be followed. Also, seat belts and standard emergency vehicle response operations. Procedures for off-duty firefighters that respond to emergencies, kind of like what you were just saying, right? You had a lot of off-duty guys show up, so now we need to implement some expectations on what we want them to do.
Well, I think you go back to, we weren't, the culture, the culture of the organization was that you were technically never off duty. And if you wanted to promote a lot of people, the fast track was to come back to calls off duty, because you're providing that free resource. If we've only got 3 on the truck that day, we don't need an extra truck because we've got 4 people coming back off duty who have radios. They go home. The problem is there was no accountability system for that. There was no integration into some tactical or strategic level plan. It was just you get what you get. People come back, and if they do, they do. If not, then we're just going to eventually, it'll burn down to our size. We didn't burn down a lot of things, but we definitely used sheer aggression to overcome manpower and resources, to say the least.
That's a good way to put it. Implementing incident command and tactical operations training. So as you make these changes, you obviously need to train on them, right?
Yeah. And I think the idea there, Tony, was especially from the perspective of when I arrived there, was to get everybody to play off the same playbook. Every fire department has 25 fire departments in miniature inside of it, with the A shift department, B shift department, C shift department. But there was a structure that had evolved that I came through that said, well, even if you're on A shift, there's a certain amount of things you need to do this way on B shift days and C shift days, and that became part and parcel of what that was. Develop a new doctrine or develop a doctrine that was the Charleston Fire Department doctrine for command, not the A shift command doctrine, B shift command doctrine, and C shift command doctrine.
Nope, understood. Yeah, but and then another one is provide training for firefighter safety and survival, risk management, air management. Again, the firefighter survival training, which I guess it was that not a topic that was covered much in your department.
I don't believe at the level that we look at nationally now for what it would be. And I don't, you know, I even though in my mind, I knew we would lose someone eventually, but we never planned for if this happens, this is what we're going to do. And, you know, the ability to fall back to a plan B or a plan C wasn't necessarily what we were good at. We were good at that initial. And when we got past that 20-30 minute mark, then we struggled as an agency back then. So, but I do want to talk about this, probably the training, and everyone in Charleston went through RIT and Rescue the Rescuer. And having to do that 9, 10, 12 months after the Sofa Superstore was probably the most disheartening and heartbreaking thing I've had to watch in the fire service, watching grown men and women go through that training after what they had been through to simulate the very disaster that a lot of them had just walked through. You know, they could still smell it and taste it, and then having to go back through it. That's in my career and all the things I had to do. That was one of the most heartbreaking things that I ever had to pretty much enforce on people.
Yeah, I can imagine. Another one, providing incident safety officer for command officers and health and safety training for selected personnel. Again, emphasis on those command officers and ensuring that they have the needed training. Assuring all new firefighters are trained and certified to firefighter 2 level before assignment to emergency duty. That was not routine firefighter 2 level?
No, I'll put it to you this way. I had 20 years on the job and I took firefighter 1 and 2. That's when I took it.
And the tie back here is the actual settlement with OSHA, and Chief Tippett can collaborate this. One of the settlements with OSHA after the Sofa Superstore investigation was that everyone come up to the firefighter 2 level, and we did lose employees, just a handful. You know, the sheer tenacity of the Charleston firefighter. I think we had 220 incumbent members who challenged and passed firefighter 1 and firefighter 2. But that was also a tie back to an OSHA mandate as well.
Yeah, if you think about an accomplishment that you can't underappreciate, it's that ability to be able to put the workforce through that. Because as Jack mentioned, 20 years on the job and he had to do firefighter 1 and 2. Other chiefs, more time on the job, had to do the same thing. If you wanted to stay in the operational field, you had to go through firefighter 1 and 2. So watching that element evolve and realize that people their jobs really were hanging on the line, because if they couldn't pass the test, they could no longer be operational firefighters, which meant they were being forced retirement. So there was a tremendous effort put into the members passing the state exam and the skills sessions and run the fire department every day. So it wasn't as if this was almost all this was done on duty. So the companies are still running calls, the companies are still doing their other mandatory work, and they're studying to pass the state exam.
Yeah, sometimes you think that people look at us and say, well, just stop, right? Just close the doors for a second or something and do this, right? I remember, you would get all these things come to you, and it's not like we don't have office hours, right? It's not like we can close the doors and train everybody and then open back up. I'm sure it was difficult. Increasing the initial response to structural fire to 3 engines, a ladder with a 3rd engine as a rapid intervention. And then responding an assistant chief, 2nd battalion, a 4th engine to a confirmed working structure fire. So again, just understanding the need for more resources. and getting them on the road. The third engine is RIT. That was yeah, obviously that you didn't have that before, so that was a new procedure here with that. And then the fourth engine, what would they do when they get there? Flexibly deployable.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back because we went through several phases of this. I think that fourth engine was just kind of like your standby guy. If you had a curveball hit you or you need to throw some additional resources at it, you had one that was unassigned. I think that's the initial reason for the fourth.
Yeah, and that evolution went really quickly, Tony, from the release of the Routley report until I got there in 2008. There were already 4 engines assigned to the box. So they had already gone from add one more to add additional one to have the 2nd Battalion chief. So I'm sure, at least from my perspective, it was a very recognizable response package with duties and assignments and all that kind of stuff. But again, to their credit, their ability to adapt and make these things happen on a very short string was nothing short of admirable.
Eliminating 10 codes and using designated tactical channels for major incidents. Oh, I missed that. The 2nd Due Battalion Chief will be a safety officer unless the staff safety officer is already on the scene. And then 10 codes. So you went to plain English radio traffic.
Mhm.
All right, large diameter supply hose. Did you go to 4-inch or 5-inch? 5-inch.
Yeah,
It was
we
fine.
went to 5.
And then using a minimum of 1.5-inch hose for fire attack and standardizing nozzle configurations. So the booster line, right? That was a pretty popular line to pull off.
Yeah.
And then I heard you had like 1.5-inch boosters as well.
Yeah, remember I spoke about that year of, trying to figure out where we were going to go. There was an idea to put an 1.5-inch booster in place of the 1-inch booster, because so many of our operations, and you've got to look too. You got a culture of traditionality. Every engine, every operation in Charleston Fire Department was based on the way we had done it. So, with nozzles set on 60 gallons a minute on an 1.5 inch, maybe 95. Now we're changing to 5-inch. We're trying to push more water out. We're changing our operations. We had a whole slew of changes we had to go through. But the 1-inch booster line had been the preferred method of attack on the majority of fires in the city of Charleston. And when you think about it, a 1-inch booster was set on 40 and your 1.5 is set on 65. There really wasn't, not condoning it at all, but in the Charleston idea of another truck will be here within 30 to 45 seconds. That's the way it had gone for many, many years.
So
Yeah. And I'd like to expand on that. This right here, this nozzle, when in 86, when I started, that's set on 23 gallons a minute. And that's what we were pulling inside of structure fires. And then we went to the 40 after that, but I still have one of those to set on 23. So that's kind of the cultural dynamics that we were dealing with. And if it always worked, why change,
and that was a 1-inch booster.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's easy to get on, easy to get off, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I get it. And so what are you using now? Are you using 150 gallon per minute line, 75 psi?
They just changed, and I can't speak. They just switched. I know it's a low pressure nozzle, but a high volume. But yeah, nothing like what we were doing. And I think a lot of them are using the stack tip. I think that's the preferred tip that's on the pre-connects right now.
A smooth bore?
Yeah, not stack tip, smooth bore. Yeah.
No, that's good. Good stuff.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
and
So, a lot of changes there, and you think obviously it made for still a quality, still an aggressive fire department, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we kind of started substituting the word intentional for aggression. So in part of trying to talk to people about what they were doing when they got to the fire ground, it was get to the fire ground with an intent of doing something that you've thought through, not just go in the building and then figure out what you're going to do as you're faced with factors. We switched over to 1 3/4 lines. We went to 150 gallon per minute minimum flow. Implemented the minimum 3-line attack concept for structure fires. Whether it was working or not, we wanted people to pull lines to get accustomed to the work. Dropping a supply line for full responses, whether you had anything working or not, just to get into the habit. And I mean, God bless them for that 5-inch hose wasn't always easy, but that's what they had purchased. In retrospect, 4-inch would have been easier to deal with, especially in the tight street areas. But 5-inch is what you had. So if you wanted to get good at handling 5-inch hose, you had to handle 5-inch hose.
No, absolutely. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of a aggressive fire department, right? Is one that puts themselves in position, the right position, practices these things and gets good at it. So wasn't a throw our hands up and say, this is how we've always done it. There actually was progression to I don't know when I say change, right? We can just say, I think you evolved, right? The Charleston Fire Department evolved into the modern fire department.
Yeah, from the upper level of the department, we were sensitive to the fact that, and we heard it in our station meetings about, there's nothing but change happening. Everything is changing. Every day something changes. So we sat on that for a while, and we thought, well, we really need to come up with something different to have them appreciate not only what we were trying to achieve, but also what they were achieving. So we started using the change the vocabulary. So we're talking about making progress. We're no longer talking about change. We're just talking about making progress, because that was, I know from being able to be exposed to a department that had a history much longer and deeper than I came from. When you walked into Central Station to come to work in the morning, and you saw the grooves that were cut in the floor for the horses, and you saw the remnants of where the harnesses hung, and you got to walk up those stairs of a building that had been delivering fire protection since 1887. It was kind of inspiring, and you got to thinking, if it wasn't for progress, the horses would have still been down there, or maybe even worse, maybe it would have been hand-drawn apparatus. So he sort of kind of took that stuff in stride and tried to focus on what they were doing.
So I like to usually wrap up the show with you guys giving the people who might listen here. Hopefully we get some people to be interested in what's going on. Give them like 2 or 3 things that you think they should learn, or they should take away from this incident, from the Charleston's evolution, from what you guys were involved in. 2 or 3 things that you think might be able to impart some wisdom or something. Chief, you want to take a shot at it, Chief Tippett?
Actually, I'd like to defer to Mark and Jack first.
All right.
Chief Tippett. I could speak for hours on this. Going back to what we were just talking about with the, progress. Charleston lost its ability to have a destiny in 2007 for quite a while. We lost our ability to write our own record for a few years because we had shown that we had not kept up with where we needed to be. We had a rally panel, and I think Charleston is just now getting back to the point where it can come back into its own true identity. And there's not a fire chief or a fire department in this country that wants that. Jack and I are part of a very sad fraternity of firefighters who have been involved in a multiple line of duty death, a huge event. And I can assure you there's not a firefighter out there that wants to do that. But as a fire department, especially an East Coast fire department, you should never hide behind the word tradition so that you don't have to change. And the saying, well, it's always worked this way. We've always done it this way. If it doesn't bite you now, it will bite you sooner or later. And that's what I worry about with firefighters. I speak about it every day, tradition and culture. You know, our culture is that we will have our traditions, but we're not going to let them impede progress. And when you isolate yourself as a fire department, it's either because you don't want anybody else to see what you're doing, or you believe that you're the best and nobody else can tell you what to do. And that, just like in politics, isolationism is a true recipe for disaster. And this is your podcast is Mayday Monday. And as much as I love those 9 guys who died, and I love everybody I work with in Charleston, there should not have been a Mayday that day. We'd have had proper command and control, accountability, and we'd have attacked that building like we were attacking a commercial building instead of a single family dwelling. The outcome probably would have been different if we would have changed on our own instead of having our endeavors forced upon us. I think that would have been a different day. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about those 9 guys and how it would have been different if Charleston would have been more progressive.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief. And I know that you are carrying that with you as you lead another fire department. And I know that those are horrible lessons learned, but that was well put. And I think that will, yeah, you're going to be that's going to make you a good leader out there. You have I don't want to say a duty to uphold, but you do, right? I mean, those 9 guys, there's a lot there. And your history, the history of the Charleston Fire Department, there's a lot to pass on, and I know you will. So thank you for that. Thank you for spending your time today. Chief Jack.
I'd like to expand a little bit or add to what Mark said. I was promoted to battalion chief in 2009, right on the cusp of all these changes. So I was at the right place at the right time to grab a hold of everything that we were doing. And I really jumped into the whole incident management perspective pretty hard. I started analyzing, detail-oriented with everything that I was doing. And inside that incident management, I started grabbing a whole resource management. And that's building your resources or adding more resources to the building type, forecasting and seeing where it's going, and making sure I have additional resources on scene for the curveball, because you're going to get it. So my concept with resource management is make sure everyone is not assigned. You have to have 1 or 2 crews that are unassigned for that curveball, because you will get it. The other one is accountability. Make sure you know where all you people are at all times. And I'm not talking about moving from the bedroom to the living room. I'm talking about serious geographical shifts, 1st floor, 2nd floor, because you got to be able to relay good intel if you have a Mayday to the crews that are inside, and your Mayday or your RIT team. You want to get good information to them. And finally, tactical worksheet. I'm a big proponent of tactical worksheet. I've helped design the one in Charleston. I've modified that with my own. I have my own writing style to where I know exactly where people are, because one thing that is not talked about with the Sofa Superstore, I don't think I've ever heard, is the condition of people's mind in the middle of that event. So I remember blank looks on people's faces. So that's telling me, is your mind really working well, or the way it's supposed to, or the way you want it to, when you get that Mayday and the hair stands up on the back of your neck? So to me, nobody really knows what your mind is going to do and how well you think through this, unless it happens. So if you've got really good notes on a tactical worksheet that you can understand quickly, now if you're frazzled by the Mayday, all you have to do is read your notes, get good information to good and quick, concise information to your RIT team, and find your guy on the inside who's closest to that Mayday where it happened inside the building.
Yeah, and that's something, right, that I think that there's a lot of guys who think, well, I got a worksheet, I don't have to practice. These are the things you have to practice too, right? Just like pulling a line, just like pumping the engine.
Yep.
These are perishable skills. So if you don't practice those things as close as possible to the real thing, yeah, you'll get that shock when it does hit you. No, thank you.
You think about all the effort you put into making driver. You need to really think about that kind of effort going into your resource management and your tactical worksheet management for your events.
Yeah, you can't discount that stuff. I do think that that's important, right? Make sure you have enough resources. Also, I think I've been there where I got all I need, and then you said a curveball, something throws it in there. So just like
Yeah.
we carry in, just like we're gonna, like you guys made the change to an 1.75 inch hand line, so you had more than enough water.
Right.
Same thing. You want more than enough resources.
Yeah.
All right, Chief Tippett is now good.
Yeah, I think you can, and the listeners can honestly see that the success of the Charleston Fire Department's recovery was the people that were there. They're, through Mark and Jack's determination every day, they could have just as easily just turned in their papers and left, but they didn't. They came to work and put their heart and soul in it for all the right reasons. From the work that I do now, it's and it was really imparted on me when I was in Charleston. The tragedy of a firefighter fatality goes way beyond just the people that died. There were, 9 firefighters died that day, but I would even conservatively want to say 2,000 to 3,000 people were impacted. When you talk about the families, the coworkers, the extended families, even people in the city government, for instance, the people that I would encounter every day on the government side that had to live with looking and processing the final pay sheets or anything else that they had to do. So it's more than just the event. It never ends. That bubble just continues to expand. So I think more than anything else, we want to avoid these events at all costs because of the lifetime impact that it has. As Mark said, the Charleston Fire Department gave up their ability to provide their own destiny, and that was among Tom's goals, was to give the Charleston Fire Department back to the Charleston Fire Department. That was it. We were transitional people. Our responsibility and job, he made it clear every day that he and I interacted, was that we got to get this fire department back into the hands of these people because it's theirs. It's their. We're just the custodians and guiders for a while. That was our role. Jack touched on it, but orienting to conditions is so critical. If you miss the cues, if you're not really up on your game that day, you're going to be able to just be set up for failure. So orienting is so critical. And then last but not least, and this again talks back to one of Mark's points, the progress is so much a function of survival. If you don't constantly assess how you're doing business on a daily basis to make sure you're accomplishing your goals by intent and not just surviving by luck, then you're going to go down one of these paths. And it's not 100% avoidable, but it is much more avoidable in most cases than we want to admit. And I couldn't have been more proud to spend time there with these guys and learning from them and having the ability to offer opportunity, if nothing else. So it was a privilege and an honor.
Yeah, it was my privilege and honor to speak with you guys about this. It's 15 years, and hopefully the memory will not die, right? And that's one of the things we're trying to do today is to get the word out, get it from a different view. I know hopefully everybody's read one of the reports, right? But it's a whole lot different to talk to people that were there, and not only that were there, but made it a mission to recover from that and make sure it didn't happen again, to their fire department or to other fire departments. Jack, Mark, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys coming on and giving us the lowdown. Chief Tippett, good to see you again. Hope you heal and get back on the rig. North Beach needs you there. Everybody else, that was another edition of Mayday Monday. We'll see you in July. Stay cool, and thanks for coming.